Hello. This lesson is on using an equation mat. An equation mat is just like the mats that we've been using, the expression mats, with the exception of in the center there's a double line which represents an equal sign. So whatever's on one side of the expression mat is equal to what's on the other side of the expression mat. And here we see an example of an equation that's placed on the equation mat at the right. So looking at these terms, we have 2x, we have minus 1, and see how there's the two x's in the numerator, or not the numerator, but the plus side of the mat here, and there's a minus 1. And then it says minus, and in parentheses, negative x plus 3. So that means on the minus side of the mat, you would have a negative x, and you'd have 3 positive 1s right down here, okay? And that is going to equal 6, okay, so here you have 6 1s in the plus side of the mat on the right, minus 2x. So on the minus side you have 2 x's. Now there are other possible ways that you can represent this on the equation mat, but this is one way to do it. Alright, so here, let's look at this first picture. Here we have an equation mat. And if you're looking carefully at this equation mat, we have a minus x right here, and there's a positive x, then you have a plus 1 and a minus 1, here's a 1, it's on the minus side, here's a negative x, okay? So, looking at this equation mat, I have done some simplification, okay? And see if you can detect what I've removed from the mat. And this is what the mat looks like after I've done a couple of those moves. Okay, do you see where I did some simplification using some legal moves? Well, first of all, I removed those because that's a 0. Okay, and then I removed another 0 here. And I took these off because 1 minus 1 would be 0. Alright, so you can see that on the right side I just have the 2 x's remaining in the plus side of the mat. And then on the left side, those tiles right there are gone. Alright, so here's where we left off on the previous slide. Alright, so now I made another move. Do you see what I did? Okay, so I removed a 0 right there, and that got me to this mat. Okay, here's where we left off on the previous slide, and see if you can figure out what I did here. Okay, so I moved this up, and I flipped it around, and made it positive, so that got us to this point right there. So far, I haven't done anything different than what we've been doing. Okay, so here's where we left off on the previous slide. Now look carefully at what I did. I added something to this mat. Do you see what I added? That's right. I added a negative x to both sides of the mat. Since this is an equation, now I didn't have the double line like we talked about, but since this is an equation, whatever I do to one side, I would do equally to the other side in terms of adding or subtracting. Okay, so in the previous slides, I've done nothing but just simplifying each side. But now, this is the first time where I've done a move that I've applied to both sides. Okay, and by adding a negative x to both sides, I purposely did that because that allows me to then remove a 0 here and remove a 0 here. Excuse me. And so that will get us over to this mat where I have x by itself, and then on the other side I have minus 1. Now since this is an equation mat, whatever on one side is equal to the other side. So what I have is I have x is equal to -1. I've solved an equation for x. Well, that's all for tonight. Remember, read some books.